All right, so want to talk about depression. Welcome, check in with Chuck. As you know, depression, a lot of our people right now are going through depression, not just going through it, but are really suffering from depression. Now, we need to understand what this depression is. What is this little thing that is causing us to suffer so much? Going through hell, cannot sleep, cannot function properly. What is it about this depression that is destroying us as human beings who are supposed to be superior over everything in the earth, right? So what is it about the depression? How do we fix the depression, right? When you deal with depression, you're dealing with a mental problem. So it's just like if you have a problem in your body with your bone, you're going to go to a bone specialist. You're not going to go to an eye doctor, right? So it's the same when you're dealing with mental problems. It is pertaining to the mind. So why do we keep going to pills and all of these things? Antidepressant. It's not, these are not, solutions to the problem. These are just methods for suppressing our mental problems, just like any other substances that we use. We're not fixing it. So the depression itself, what is this depression? What can we say about the depression for a person experiencing depression? What would they say their experience of depression is? Richie, would you like to come up and say something about this? Anybody? What is the experience of depression? We all use the word, of course, but go ahead, Empress, if you have something to add regarding the depression.
Well, I was saying here that a lot of times depression manifests itself physically in the body because sometimes you have various aches and pains and you don't realize that it's your state of mind that is causing it. I can speak from my own personal experience having certain pains, and no matter what the doctors to you for that pain, it is not resolved until you address the actual issue at hand. And I think the thing is, we tend to internalize and personalize circumstances a lot, and we are required a lot to just step outside of what is happening and just observe it rather than internalize it. There's a lot to it.
So from what we're dealing with here, we understand that it's a mental problem. However, it has to manifest in the body because the body is the manifestation of whatever goes on in the mind or in the spirit. So everything manifests in the body. It doesn't matter what, there's nothing that can manifest outside of the body. So the body is the ground of manifestation, regardless of what the source of the problem is. So the root of the problem is mental, right? So from the mental state, how do we deal with depression? Because the depression is not our problem. Our problem is what? We are lost in our attachment, and now we cannot detach ourselves from the depression. So we identify ourselves with depression. What do we say? I am depressed. I am is supposed to be separate from everything else in the world. So how comes now depression is something that is used as an, adjective to describe the I am? When did it become a description for the I am? I am depressed. No, you are not depressed. You know about your experience of depression. So if this is depression and you know about this, that means there are two entities here. So which one are you? Are you the depression or are you the I am? So that's where the problem is. Even in the way we talk, we are already giving over our souls to what? These different objects, our feelings, our thoughts, our sensations. So we are, all right, no problem, Richie. That cool, man. It would have good if you talk still, but that's all right still. We work with that. So what we keep doing is what? We're suffering because of our identity. We don't know the truth of ourselves. We don't know what we really are. And because of that ignorance, this is the very reason why we suffer, because you are always separate from the things that you know. This is what is known to you, and you has to be separate from what is known. So once you can identify yourself and be established in that identity, then now you start to do what? Making a separation. So there's a process of what? Detachment. Shalom, welcome guys. There's a process of detachment starts to take place. And in you start to see yourself for what you really are. Now you start to do what? You're starting your liberating process. And then you understand that, oh, I am no longer my suffering. I am not my suffering. I was never my suffering. I was just mistaking my identity for my what? Feelings of depression. Depression is a feeling, it comes and goes. You're not, even a person that's going through depression, are you always depressed 24/7 every day? No. You're going to have some moment where your feelings change, right? But what you are never changed. So we have to start by doing that detachment. And in that process is where we're going to find what? The truth of ourselves. Because the only thing we're seeking is what? Happiness. Happiness is the only thing we're seeking. So the more you seek for happiness is the more you suffer from depression. Here's an example. Take an object, place it against your hand like this. Hold it there, right? Imagine this to be the depression, right? Now, with the hand that is against the object, try to escape. What you'll find out is that the pain increases. The more you're trying to escape it, is the more the sensation of the pain intensifies. That's the same thing with the depression. This is depression. It's not hurting. There's a suffering, but there's just a sensation. But when you start to try to escape it, that's when your real pain starts. So your problem is not the depression. Your problem is what? You trying to resist your suffering. So it's only in our judgment why we suffer. We do not suffer from depression. We do not suffer from fear. We do not suffer from these experiences. You only suffer from going up against it, meaning you want to change your reality.
I have a
That's it.
question
Yeah, go ahead.
because I don't understand the thing that you said where you said depression is not something that you feel like all the time. Depending on what you're depressed about and the person, that is something that you experience the whole entire time. Based off my experience in times that I have went through depression, especially like as a younger child after my grandmother died, like I was literally depressed for years. And like she spoke on where pains were manifested and certain things like that, like that actually manifested it. And I didn't actually overcome those depressions until I was literally like 17, 18, and my grandmother died when I was 8. So you do feel that like continuously the whole entire day. It doesn't matter. Like you may laugh, but that's just more of like another emotion that comes out in that moment. That does not dismiss the fact that you're actually feeling depression. That doesn't take that away.
May I interject just a second? I think you're right, Judith. And what he's trying to say is, yes, you are feeling these feelings, but don't identify yourselves with these feelings. It's a very thin line. So it's good to acknowledge that I am feeling depressed, but saying I am depressed is like you're taking it onto your own identity. And it's a subtle thing because we don't really recognize how closely we identify with our states of being. Because believe me, I've been there so many times in so many depressing states and how it affected me physically, that the minute that I recognize how I was viewing things, it's about shifting the perspective. I was able to know, differentiate between what was happening. So I can identify, yes, I am feeling depressed. I am feeling pain. Because when I was growing up, I used to cut myself. And this was because I used to have so many pains, emotional pains associated with depression and what was going on around me, that I couldn't identify. It didn't make sense. And but when I cut myself and I felt that pain, I could identify, okay, I am feeling that pain on my arm right there because I have cut myself, and therefore that is the reason for that pain. Depression is such an invisible thing that you're feeling this pain and there's no real way to word it. But once you can differentiate between who you are and what you're experiencing, that's when you can begin to overcome it.
But I want to deal with Judith's point. So Judith, you're saying that the feeling of depression was constant without changing for years. Is that what you're saying, Judith? Confirm that for me, please.
Yes.
So that means you, in those period of years, you've never experienced another emotion during that experience.
That's what I was saying. I can, but
Hold on,
that's
hold on, let me
like
turn it off.
okay. But no, that's what I was saying. Like, yes, I experienced far as okay, it might have been times where I actually laughed, or it might have been times where I felt embarrassment, or it might have been times where other things presented itself. But that does not mean that I still was not in a depressed state. I mean, I feel like depression, just like, I mean, I'm not saying that I don't agree with that is a state as far as just saying I am feeling depressed. It is a feeling, it is emotion, but it's also like something that's actually mental. And like being depressed can also like affect how you go about day-to-day life, how you actually comprehend what's going on, especially as a child being depressed, because my depression came about from grief. So it wasn't something that I knew how to comprehend or that I knew how to take in. So it automatically put me in a really, really emotional state that I could not get myself out of. And just because I felt
Okay, I don't know what happened to her. I wanted to talk about this. I understand what you're saying. Empress, you said because it clouds your existence, it is it's a consistent feeling. Right. So this is what I wanted to really get her to really look into, because if it is something that comes and goes, for example, she said during the depression period she was experiencing feelings of disappointment, embarrassment, grief, whatever, that means the depression is never permanent. It has to
No,
be
I don't want to cut you, but I think what she's saying, it's an overall feeling. It's like when your baseline, like when you're going to do exercises or whatever. All right, when you're in the medical field, especially when it comes to blood pressure, we like to take your blood pressure on a regular basis so we can establish what your baseline is. What is your normal blood pressure? So if it goes above your normal, we can know we need to do some type of intervention to address that. Now, when your baseline is this overall feeling of depression, it is different, because I can attest to what she's saying, especially when this is coming from childhood. It's like you have an overall. I know it's a feeling, but you have to understand. Sometimes you have to learn how to separate these things as you grow. But as a child, especially if you don't have parents around you who are capable of helping you navigate these emotions and these feelings, it's a heavy cloud that's around you constantly. You might have moments where you might laugh, but immediately thereafter you're back to your baseline feeling and operation of depression. And so it takes growth and experience and sometimes some self-assessment to be able to help take yourself out of it. But you see, even when you take yourself out of it, you will still find yourself automatically going to that baseline if you do not have consistency in working on yourself. So I get what you are saying, but I think that I want you to understand where she's coming from.
but see, this
okay.
is what I want y'all to actually understand too. You can sit here and say all day, like a person is not going to say, I feel depression. You're going to hear a person say, I feel sadness, or like things like that. You're not going to actually hear a person come out and tell you that they feel depression. So depression brings on other emotions. So that's kind of what make it different, because he's putting it more of in a category of an emotion, which can alter as time go on. Even if I'm depressed, that does not mean I cannot laugh, which with you, like you feel like because I'm laughing, that is a sign of me being happy. But in our actuality, I can laugh because I'm uncomfortable. I can laugh because I'm just trying to feel at ease. It's certain things that can come about where I'm showing something that you can mistake as the wrong emotion just by trying to read it from the outside.
Doing now, we are now going back through the internalizing process. So as you said, you were depressed as a child, but as a child you did not have the discernment you have now. You did not have it back then, so you are no longer looking at the same depression as you were when you were 12 years old going through it. You are looking at it as the mature person you are now, so you are now internalizing. So what I'm saying is, even though you said you can laugh, but even if you experience a feeling of anger during that time, it means that the depression was never permanent. So it is to conclude my point that even if it's a long term, like you had it for 5 years depression, the point is it was coming and going. So once it's coming and going or appearing and disappearing, that can confirm the fact that it comes and go. It's never permanent. Meaning, when you sleep, do you experience what is your experience of depression during sleep? Because if it's permanent, it should still be there. If you guys understand my question, because we're trying to get it whether it's permanent or is it coming and going. That's what we want to confirm.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying.
Hold on, let me turn off. Let me turn off.
Okay. That's what I'm saying. It may come and go for most people. But in all actuality, it's a lot of people who never come out of depression. It doesn't matter what state you're in. Now, this is the thing, because I have experienced grief before. When my brother just died, not even 2 years ago yet, like literally, I went into a mode to where I didn't feel anything. I didn't have any type of feeling, but that was a form of depression. So I didn't literally feel, or like I wasn't literally like somewhat experiencing something. But now that, of course, I have a child and I have other things that I have to do, I was able to get myself out of it because, okay, I've experienced this grief before. But that does not mean that everybody knows how to come out of depression. It's people who go off and kill themselves and they never actually come out of that state. It's more of a state of mind. Depression is more of a state of mind than an actual emotion, because you feel different emotions during the state of depression.
Go back and answer what I asked. What you just answered was not what I asked. I'm not saying you coming out of the depression. I'm saying the feeling of depression coming and going, not you coming out of it. I hope you understand the question I'm asking.
Yeah, we understand what
But what Judith just answered was not what I asked. I want to know if the feeling of depression, because remember, we're dealing with feeling of depression and we're dealing with the emotions that we experience in our bodies that came from the depression, because the depression is not physical. The depression happens at where? The mental state. It manifests in itself in the body with different emotions. The body emotes, the mind does not emote. So we need to separate emotions from feelings. So we are internalizing. Hold on, somebody's inviting. Go ahead, Empress.
Yes, I was saying that both of you are making the same point, but just in different ways. You understand me? So while I can understand where she's coming from, because as she says, not everybody comes out of this. Some people never really survive because
Wow.
they never make that connection. Somebody mute, please. They never make that connection between
Mute welfare 25. Mute, yeah. Go ahead, Empress.
right. So sometimes people never get to that realization. So I understand where you're coming from, Cosmic, where you're trying to get people to know that they need to separate these things. But she's simply making a factual statement that hey, not many people get to that kind of realization that hey, I need to kind of detach from the moment and see it for what it is and try to learn from it and move on. Because there's a whole depression is such a personal thing that there's no one size fit all thing for anybody. There are mitigating circumstances. There are things outside in other people's personal lives that may contribute to their depression. So everybody has individualistic things that they're dealing with, and so there's not a blanket one size fits all kind of scenario that you can work on. But it's about opening the eyes of people to know that hey, and sometimes we have to be gentle too, to the fact that hey, we have more control than we think. And so sometimes people don't want to let go of their reality that they're used to. And sometimes it's hard for them because of the circumstances that they're in.
That's good. That's fair enough. But I wanted to Judith to come back, because I want you guys to understand, I'm not talking about a person getting out of the depression. Just like grief carries a cycle. You go through the bargaining, the denial, all of these things, right? Then at the end of that cycle, you jump out of it, because if you don't jump out, the cycle is going to start over again. You start bargaining, denial, all of these things. I'm not talking about you getting out. I'm talking about the feeling, whether it comes and goes or is it permanent. That was the question that we're dealing with. Because if it's permanent, then we have other things to get into. But if it's not permanent, that's what we need to deal with. That's the reality of the depression. So I'm saying, is it permanent, even if it lasted for 5 years?
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hi. Can I answer that? All right. So I've experienced. Oh, hi everybody. By the way, I didn't really expect to be here. But thank you for adding me. I've experienced depression on and off in high school, and coming into adulthood, I can say I experienced it as well. And what I know is that it's never permanent, but it evolves. I believe the feeling evolves depending on the state of your life, or the, what would I say, the season of your life. So when I was in high school, the experience of being a teenager and all of the woes, and just that experience. We've all been teenagers. We know it might not be the same for everybody, but being bullied, the pressure of trying to fit in and everything like that, that caused a depression. Having your heart broken in high school, all them say get your heart broken young. Yeah, that caused depression too. And then, but the depression, it evolved. I mean, there was times where in high school when I was feeling like I couldn't laugh, and I thought it was the end of the world. And then coming into like adulthood, you experience a time of, oh, finally this high school thing is over. In COVID, I experienced a time of calm. I had like that whole year. I was great because I had time to be in hermit mode, be by myself, and then coming out of that again, I went in straight into the workforce. I was going to college, and then I went into the workforce. That is a new state of depression now, because it's just like, all right, I have to juggle the pressure of school and then the pressure of working. And I was working in a call center that come with a whole different demon. And yeah, I don't believe depression is permanent, because right now I'm not depressed. I just had a child. I feel like I'm experiencing the happiest time of my life. Looking at my child right now, it's just like depression where? But yeah, there's postpartum depression, but I don't feel that. I feel like some people can say, "Oh, when I had a child, I experienced this form of depression," but I believe it evolves and it can definitely go away. And if somebody is permanently depressed, then that's something where them really need to go and sort out what they're actually feeling. But yeah, that's my
Um,
take on it.
Gratitude for sharing your experience. That's a good point. And Empress makes a point here. She says it's not permanent, but it's consistent. So this is what this is, because remember, we want to get to a certain distinction, because we're doing what? Getting to the root of the depression, right? We're not dealing with the depression like when were going through it. Like Wealthier 25 says, there are many causes. Your cause of depression might not be the same as mine. My depression was what? My friend died. He died of murder. Right? We did a show together on Saturday night. I used to be a dancer, break dancer, right? We did a show together Saturday night. 2 nights after that, he was murdered. So I went through depression. So I know exactly, we all have different causes, but we're not dealing with the causes. We're dealing with the feeling of depression. So she said it's consistent, not permanent. And you said, Wealthier, you experienced depression in high school and you experience it again but at the end of the day, it's not permanent. So that was the point. So Judith, do you now understand my question? You can go ahead, Judith, and speak.
I understand your question and kind of what I was trying to get to and what I was making a point of. Just like she was saying, like, okay, based on certain things, like majority of us have talked about grief. She spoke on postpartum depression. But see, those are actual experiences. So when you actually go through certain experiences, you can pull yourself out of it. What about people who, like, it really wasn't certain experiences, it was just certain thoughts that were placed in their head, far as like spirit wise, like how the spirit can like put certain things in your head, and like you can go into a depression because you're battling thoughts that's in your head. So it's just certain things, and I'm not saying that it's permanent. Like, I understand, like I'm saying it's a possibility to come out, but it's some people who, regardless, they cannot come out because they cannot run from those thoughts, they cannot run from those feelings. So I get.
What's happening, Judith? You keep I'm not hearing you if you're speaking. I don't know if you're speaking. But yes. So we understand that, and the point that we're dealing with now, like as we said, now we can know that we can all come to the agreement that it is not permanent. It might be consistent for 3 years, 5 years, and so forth. Now we can deal with the next point you mentioned about the multitude of thoughts, because that's what now causes us to do what? Get overwhelmed. Because what are we now doing? We now give our soul over to this depression. It's like, surrender to the depression rather than having the depression surrender to you. Because why? We now want to change our depression. Like in my case, what did I turn to? I just witnessed, no, I did not witness, but my friend just got murdered in front of, not in front of me. He just got murdered, right? He was one of my best friends. Now, what do you think I'm gonna turn to? At what do you? Maybe I was about in my. I was in my 20s. I did not know anything. I did not know about seeking counsel. I did not know anything about that. I'm gonna turn to alcohol, right? So I drank myself away. I ended up in the hospital, 2 drips. You see what I'm saying? So we all go through different things because we have to find some objects to deal with the depression because we did not understand it. So I'm no longer speaking about the depression from when I was going through it as that young man. I'm speaking about it today where I use MJ when I was depressed. What's MJ? Okay, MJ, okay. Right, you see? So we all turn to substances, most of us. But no, we know about meditation. No, we know about detachment. No, we know about what? Finding the truth of ourselves and separate from what is not ourselves. So this is what I'm saying. What we are is permanent, meaning even when you sleep, you are still there. You are still present. It's always present. You are ever present. It never goes away. The mind goes away, right? So once the mind goes away, guess what? Thoughts don't exist. When you go to sleep at night, in your depression, in your fear, whatever state of mind you have, what goes on in your thoughts? You see, the mind goes away, so the world goes away with it. Go ahead.
Like I said, there's no one size fits all. And if you're gonna speak on, when you go to your bed and think it exists in your sleep state. Because either you can't sleep, or when you do sleep, you might have some dreams that torment you. So it's still a state of mind. So your state of mind will still be there in your subconscious. So it's good for us to identify who we are versus what is happening to us or in us. And now identifying it, we now are required to gain the skills to help to deal with these issues. You understand me? So once it is that we're able to find out what this is, now we need to find the skills to address these issues, because it's one thing to know what's happening. It's a completely different thing now to know how to get yourself to a state where you can be functional.
Because in order for us to get to where we are going to, we had to understand first that it is not permanent. It doesn't matter how consistent it is, it's not permanent. So Judith said that's understandable, but those who are experienced, Judith, what's happening? Why you get kicking out? Okay, maybe it's your child or something. That's understandable, but those who are experiencing things spitefully, how do you get out of something? That's what we're gonna get to.
I'm not
Put on, because no, sometimes you're talking and it just goes out. I don't know what happened.
Oh,
And
because the way my phone is set up, like it's set up to where if it's too close to my face, it begins to like pop up like this little warning sign or whatever. So when the warning sign pops up, it kind of like, I guess, knocks out my mic or whatever.
put on you that caused voices in heard,
I'm
witchcraft are.
like, people who experience something like schizophrenia, where they're actually going through a state where they're literally realizing, because people who go through schizophrenia go through a process of actually accepting that, from like the terminology that people use, that they're crazy. So when you're going through this and you're actually hearing these voices and these things are placing things in your head, kind of telling them the same thing that you're telling somebody who's battling grief or things like that. Oh, it's not permanent. But if it's something that placed on them, far as like witchcraft or something like that, technically, if they don't know how to remove it, it's permanent.
Once you bring with witchcraft into the equation, you're really dealing with something different because, for example, sadness is an open door. And a person, sadness breeds what? Depression. When the sadness goes beyond where it should go, it turns into depression. The depression is made out of the sadness. Now, when you say witchcraft, the spirit of witchcraft, that's no longer just you battling with thoughts. This is another entity. So that would be dealt with different from a person just going through depression, like how I experienced it, or maybe this lady or you. Witchcraft is a different spirit. You're dealing with the actual entity that's altering your state of mind. So you need what? Deliverance. No, sometimes people are using these means to, being able to identify if the issue is spiritual. Right. That's the first thing. So you discern, is this an actual mental problem? Meaning it can be just a stronghold that what needs to be casted down, like how we're dealing with it now. But when you're dealing with the actual spirit, that needs deliverance. So when I'm dealing with people who are going through this, the mental aspect of it, not witchcraft, the first thing I always tell them to do is take sleeping pill, because what, you have to first break the mental pattern of not sleeping, because the way these thoughts take control of you, the first thing it has to do is consume your energy, meaning it takes away your sleep. And once your sleep is constantly being taken away, now guess what? It's easy for your mental state to be altered. So you become overwhelmed. So you have to first break the pattern of sleeping. So even if it's not sleeping pill, you find some way to get you to sleep. Because if you do not break that first, there's nothing else you can do to the body. Because the more you get lack of sleep, it's the more control it has over you. Control, right. See, some people are using these means to control. You guys understand what I just explained about the lack of sleep and how the thoughts overpower you? So you're there spending more time in the thoughts, and that's exactly what it wants. It wants you to be consumed in the thoughts, trying to make sense of it. And when you can't make sense of it because there's the multitude of thoughts coming in, it's too fast for you to process them. So that's when you get overpowered, and it start to do what? Take effect in the body physically. So the same thoughts are now manifesting physically as sicknesses and diseases. Go ahead, Empress.
Yes, what both of you guys were saying, in that when these are things are happening, what especially in Jamaica, what I tend to see happening is when someone is going through something and it manifests itself in a way that is that people can't understand. It's either it's too quickly identified and saying, oh, this is a demonic situation, this is a spiritual situation, or it is too quickly identified and saying, oh, this is a mental situation, this needs a medical intervention. It's people are too quick to jump to conclusion as to what the problem is. But if one is able to take the time out to assess themselves and to be honest with themselves as to what they are experiencing, they will be able to get the help they need. The problem with people who have these diagnoses like schizophrenia, from my experience, is that they will hear these thoughts and they identify themselves with these thoughts, and if they don't, they may identify it as someone invading them mentally, and it goes into a whole rabbit hole of, okay, probably people are planting things in my subconscious, or sometimes it's their own thoughts, but they are not identifying it as, oh, this is just a random thought and it means nothing. It is so disturbing to them that they think it has to be someone or something else going on, when really and truly it could be a medical thing. So if we are having these discussions about depression and other mental issues, as I said, it's a personal thing for everybody, depending on where they are and what stage they are in. And so once we identify what the cause is, then we can take the action steps that would be required to fix it.
And see, that's where I agree, because that's more of what I'm trying to say. That's why I was like, I don't really want, not that I was really trying to like more of battle what you were saying or kind of go against it, but I was saying more of like what you're saying, make it something that can actually be a broad type of understanding, for the simple fact of everybody can't get told the same thing because everybody did not go into that the same way. So you have to deal with it based off experience. Now to say with, oh, okay, well, if you feel grief, as time goes on and as the years pass, the more that you understand and the more that like you like, even though like once you begin to accept, all right, they're not going to be here, but I can't sit in this way, I have things going on in my life, I have to be able to move past it. Like, you have to bring people out differently, and not everybody can be brought out differently, because how you bring a person out that's experiencing grief, you cannot bring a person out that's experiencing depression from like having schizophrenia or feeling like they're a mental case or however it may be. You have to deal with it based off whoever, like whatever they're experiencing.
Talk about we are gonna have different causes of depression, but I was just getting to deal with one primary thing, because like you mentioned about a person having a multitude of thoughts. What do they do with the thoughts? They identify themselves with the thoughts. And if your depression comes in feelings, what do we do? When we are experiencing different feelings, we identify ourselves with the feelings. So regardless of how your depression was caused or this person's depression, we all do one thing in common: identify ourselves with the feelings, the thoughts, the sensations, whatever it is we're going through. We all do the one thing. And that was what I wanted to establish, that we all have that common experience. No, assessing individually, that's how you would fix each person's problem. But we have one thing in common where we misidentify ourselves for what we are going through. So we established that. Danny boy, you have something to say? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say to listening to the live here that one of the common problem I find in our community is that instead of looking for the source of our problem, we always looking on something else to blame it on or point finger to or someone. Meanwhile, we have to get counseling, seek counseling, and look at the source of our problems. Instead of blaming it sometimes on witchcraft and people that do this or people that do that, and that negates dealing with your personal problems.
They would have to be assessed. You can mute now, Danny boy. As they were saying that they would have to be assessed because if a person is definitely under a witchcraft spell, we cannot say the person is doing something intentionally when they are being controlled by other external forces. There are things internally and there are things externally, whether we choose to believe it or not. So we cannot invalidate a person's experience to say, hey, I've known this person all my life. They never behaved in this way. Yes, there is definitely something outside of him manipulating his behaviors or influencing his behaviors. Yeah, you want to say something?
Did you hear me the first time or no?
I heard what you said. So I was just clarifying that we still cannot negate the fact that it can be that source as well. So it's not to say, oh, I'm going through this, I'm under witchcraft, so I'm not gonna do anything to help my situation. No, if it's a case where a person is under a spiritual attack, then it would have to be dealt with that way. That's why when we started the topic, we said if you have a bone problem, you're gonna go to a bone specialist, you're not gonna go to an eye doctor. So if your problem is spiritual, then you're not gonna go to a physician. You see what I'm saying? You're gonna go to somebody who deals with spiritual matters.
And I totally agree with you. But what I find in our community, as I say, as a Jamaican myself, um, I find that people are quick to blame things on spirituality. Is what the point of what I'm saying. I think we're quick to blame things on spirituality or someone is attacking us spiritually. Meanwhile, some of the things I look at, I think it's not even that. A man can have a business, for an example, and in business I work, or in business I run, and next thing you know, I'm saying, boy, that the person that do this and that to me. Meanwhile, well, look at the way you're doing business. Is it something about you and the way you're doing business that's making them prefer someone else's business over yours, or going to someone else's place of business instead of yours? A lot of things. Something not right. No money not run for me. This, that not happen for me. I must somebody. That the person do it. I think that's just a common thread in our community. Meanwhile, a lot of people in our community do deal with a lot of have a lot of trauma to deal with, and guess what? Them quick to say, "Boy, somebody else." But I understand what you're saying. Still, yes, if you have certain issues, you need to seek the proper people. Yes, sometimes it can be spiritual. I'm not gonna lie about that. I've seen that myself. I believe I've been a victim of that as well too.
I have something I'd like to say. Um, so yeah, I can definitely say that many Jamaicans will blame their mental issues on witchcraft. Because when I was coming out of depression, the first thing I did was get angry, get mad, because it was like I was so like realizing the things around me, like people around me, how their behaviors when I was growing up, how their behaviors contributed to my depression. And then I get angry, and people say, "Oh, the person here do this to her, and she mad and this and that." And one thing what I can say is that it's not easy to get help in Jamaica. I don't think it's very easy to get help in Jamaica. Even if you want to get help, you're afraid to get help because you're afraid to some what people are going to say and this and that. So that's also a factor in like trying to get help and stuff of that nature.
Why? Yeah, that's true. And
Yeah,
what
if
she
you get
said, we
angry and you start studying. You see, if you get angry and you start experiencing emotion, that's a good sign when you're depressed. That's all.
yeah. So we go through those type of things, of course. And as you mentioned, Danny Boy, about bad businesses, and then we want to blame other people and stuff of that nature. But that those are good points, and we, like she Empress was saying too, we have to assess everything rather than just drafting conclusions just as, oh, this is going wrong in my life, it's a witchcraft, or it is this, or it is that, you know. Judith, you have something you want to add?
Because see, majority of y'all are kind of speaking from a Jamaican standpoint, and honestly, truthfully, in Jamaica, the whole spiritual thing is more broadly accepted. I was bringing it how I brought it out because in America, you will be more of considered as a mental case or as a problem or as a person who, like he says, has trauma, other than you're actually experiencing things that either one could have been passed down in lineage, that came about in witchcraft, however it may be. Nobody thinks about that here because that's not the first thing that we resort to. The first thing that we resort to is running to a doctor, and doctors are literally trained to not look at anything spiritual. They're going above and beyond to make it seem like it's non-existent. So it's that's why I was saying, based off where you're from and where you're experiencing it at and what's going on, it's kind of gonna alter. It's not too many places you can go here that you're just gonna find it. I mean, people sit there and talk about New Orleans all the time because that's what's pretty much known for voodoo and stuff like that. It's there, but because of the time that we're in, it's not as normal anymore there. Most of it that's really going on there is just like a joke. They putting on a front. So you still don't know who's real and who's fake or not. Like it's easier to find who's real and all of that when you're in Jamaica. But here it's not at all. So that's what I was saying. Even if you kind of do go to a person, the first thing they're gonna take you to is a Christian church, and they start praying over you, and it's just like nothing happens. So after nothing happens, people like, well, it's not even spiritual anymore. Like now this is something that you're dealing with personally. So based off places, that can also change as well.
Thank you for that input. And I want to agree because that's the thing, when we do not know who we are, and the system that is in place is designed to keep us distracted and to ensure that we do not know who we are. And so that is why people's eyes are not spiritually open, especially in a society like yours, which, you know, people find it to be so godless. And I'm so sorry that you have to be there, but you know what, in every circumstance there is cause for you to grow. Now, if we open our eyes, if we were able to open our eyes and to identify who we are, then no doctor or no other physician or even the pastor could tell me how to heal myself. No one could. And what I recognize is children usually are innately more connected to the source of God than adults, you know. But what happens is that when people are raising our kids and we identify certain things in them, because we are so spiritually blind as a people, we try to close that out of them. We try to close that side of them. We try to make them feel like that is not a logical way of being or thinking or living. You understand me? So this whimsical youthfulness that we can carry into adulthood, that would really see us walk in miracles, we can't manifest these things because we're stuck in the system. You understand me? So until we ourselves decide, okay, I'm recognizing that this is manifesting in a way because I'm under control, then we're gonna be always going to the doctors for every single thing.
Would go back to how we started, that one of the things that we need to also do is to find out who we also are. And Danny Boy and Wealthy, one of you made a comment about what happens in the black community, right? In Jamaica, it's just recent years since we have the internet and so forth. We know about seeking counsel and these things, because back in the black community, guess what? You're taking your child to school, the child witnessed somebody being murdered, right? And the parent is say, hey, go to school. That's not an event for a child to witness and still function normal. You see what I'm saying? So that's the communities we grew up in. We never had those things. It's since internet now. Like, a lot of us grew up under abusive fathers, maybe both parents, but A lot of us grew up under abusive fathers. We did not know that those were toxic behaviors. It's since we got older and start look back, we're saying those were what we were going through. Thought it was normal because this neighbor is going through the same thing. We thought it was normal. It's now since we're more exposed, we're understanding that, oh shoot, like Judith, you see the video that you sent me where the woman was saying, but then talking about Ike, they just considered him crazy, but no, they call it bipolar. But back then, when they didn't know, they call it crazy. It's the same thing. You understand? It's basically the same thing. We do not have that community, and I don't know what is the difference between psychiatrists and psychologists, but the psychiatrists, for me, I think they understand the spiritual aspect, meaning that when one of my friends was going through a certain episode, right? The psychiatrist that interviewed him, or whatever you call it, they told him plain that, hey, your ancestor visited you. But if he should have gone to a normal doctor, they're gonna want to give him that mad injection, the bull. You see what I'm saying? And there's no cure for madness, because it is no cure for madness. So those injection is what drive you to madness. It doesn't cure you. So I like the standpoint of the psychiatrist that will tell you whether it's off the books that he was speaking, but he said to him, your ancestors visited you. And that's actually what happened. He had a spiritual, experience, encounter. So how many people really assess things from that standpoint as opposed to who play by the books? Like you mentioned about doctors, like Judith mentioned back in her place. They're going to go through the doctor. They're going to go through the system. The religious system is no different from the doctor system. The same way, the same thing the church is going to do is the same thing the doctor is going to do. They're going to take away the spiritual aspect of things and just want to dumb it down to a certain belief system. And we as a people, we are trapped in belief systems. This is why we cannot find the truth of ourselves. We cannot find the truth of our own souls. We are lost souls. We don't know what we are, not who we are. We don't know what we are. Are we the mind? Are we the body? Are we a belief? Are we a personality? The personality are appearances, just like what you see outside. These are different appearances, but the Most High is one. Many appearances. So you might have different personalities, but they keep changing. But what you are never change. It never goes and comes. It's permanent. It's fixed. It's static. When are we going to come to that truth and identity of ourselves, so we don't get lost when, oh, I'm going through fear, I'm suffering, I need to suffer because I'm going through fear. Oh, I'm going through depression, I need to suffer. These are appearances, just like you're going through happiness. The happiness might go, okay, you are joyful. It might go, these are appearances. But what are you in the changing of all these appearances? What are we? What do we say we are? Shalom, guys. Welcome. Webster, Wagwan. Yeah, anything to add, anyone?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I want to point out something to you because you made a good point earlier that I wanted to also commend you on. When you said when people are going through like a depression and they're not sleeping, one of the first thing you need to do is take sleeping pill to make sure you're getting enough rest so your mind can be settled. Yeah, and you see that's a balanced attitude, which is the same attitude you need to carry through life. Now listen, if in order to know what you are, and I don't believe anyone's a what, it's who you are. But if you need to be grounded, you need to be grounded. The only way you can be grounded is to find out who you are as a person. That's the first thing that that's the first journey someone has to take on in order to live a balanced life. You have to find out who you are as a person. If you don't know who you are, this is how you end up in depression, confusion, mental breakdown, emotional breakdown, a lot of things, because you're not grounded in anything. You have to know who you are in order to be grounded. So you don't need things or people to make you happy. You know how to manage all the chaos in your life, right? You know how to manage stress. You know how to manage work. You know how to take time for yourself. You know what you'll put up with from what you won't put up with in your life. You know who to allow in your life from who not to. The only way you can get to that place is you got to find out who you are.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm a person now. For the past 5 years, I've been studying psychology, because psychology makes you understand the social world around you. Because as you talk about even depression, when my best friend passed away in 2023, that sent me in a depression too, and I luckily got to work and got myself out of that, right? But depression is something that comes from, one of the causes of depression is this: when people are bombarded with information that they don't know how to process, too much information that they don't know how to process. That's how they end up in depression, even schizophrenia, some of these things. Those are some of the easiest way to end up in that. They're in bad relationships, or they haven't found a way to deal with trauma from their childhood or past, or whatever the case may be, or relationship, parenting, friends, and the rest of family, whatever the case may be. And they're dealing with people around them who's just bombarding them with all kind of stuff. Meanwhile, there's dealing with their family, if they have kids and all of this, and as well as work, bills, and all of this. You have to know how to settle and manage all of this, or else you will have this is why people have mental breakdowns, because your mind is too bombarded. And if you don't take time out for yourself to discover who you are as a person, this will be the norm. And it's hard to let people know that, because they just don't want to hear it or can't see it. But trust me, you get to that place, it works.
And that goes back, and it's good to hear from the standpoint of the psychological aspect, so it goes back to what we started with, by saying we have to first identify what is permanent. Like you said, grounded. You use the word grounded, but I use the word permanent. What is it that never change in all of your experiences or appearances? Whether it be you're experiencing depression, you experience happiness, you experience love, you experience all those are appearances, but what you are never change. What you are, you always witness the happiness, you witness the depression, you witness the fear, you witness the anxiety, you witness all these things, but what you are has to be separate.
Yes,
If I can,
who you are.
okay, you use the word who, I use, but I think we're talking about the same concept though. So I call it a what, because I just say what I am is really I am. That's it. So I am depressed.
Yeah,
No,
but you're not a what. A what is like a thing or an animal. You're a person, so it's who you are. Who you are. So now you're humanizing yourself. You're not what in your person. You're not a what. You're not a thing.
I understand where you're coming from, but I think what he's saying is, I think we said this in another live that we had, where I had to strip away what I considered who I was from the standpoint of everything else. For example, if you've gone through an orientation at a new company, they usually have a point where they ask you to introduce yourself, tell about yourself. And most times when people are talking about themselves, they are talking about themselves in relation to someone or something else. So it's not really identifying them as a person. And I've always said, before I am Jamaican, before I'm a woman, before I am black, before I'm a human being, I am a soul. And so I'm a soul that exists in a body that happens to be black, that happens to have been born in Jamaica. And so I'm not thinking he's trying to dehumanize himself in any way. I want us to get the concept of where he's coming from, because he's not offended by identifying himself as a what, but the general concept of how language works, you see, perceptions of how language works, it will color everything when you communicate. So again, for me, I will always say, and it prevents me from getting too attached to circumstances when I identify myself that way, because then now it's easier for me to work on whatever individual issues I may be having from whatever level that I'm observing myself from.
The thing about the reason why I don't use Danny Boy, the reason I don't use the term who in that context, because when you ask a person who are you, you're gonna get a long list of many different things, because they start to do what, identifying themselves with personalities, and that's what I don't want. This is why I said what, because you're referring to, as she mentioned, she is the soul. You are the soul. You are the self, right? And that self is separate from everything. That self is the witness of your experience. That self is the observer of your experience. That self is the knower of everything that you know. So That is what I'm talking about. And the term I use for that is I am. So when I say, what are you? That's what you're going to have to identify. Are you the body? Are you the mind? Are you the spirit? What are you? But if I say, who are you? You're going to say, oh, I am Andrew. I am clever. You're going to get a lot of personalities. Oh, I'm intelligent. Oh, I'm a nice person. People, that's the way people always answer that question. So when you use the word I, this is the question now. When you use the word I, what exactly? Because we all use the word I. I call myself I. You call yourself I. I might call you Danny Boy, but you call yourself I. So what can you tell us about the I that you're referring to? Let's talk
Now
about the I.
check this out now. You see, you hit the nail on the head of what I'm saying, because if you ask a person, who are you, and they start to rambling on about I'm this, I'm that, no, that's not who you are. That's not who you are. You see, so immediately off the bat, I already know that person doesn't know who they are. Because, yeah, if I'm a carpenter, that's not who I am. You know what I mean? I'm from Jamaica. That's not who I am. So definitely, I get the spirituality of what you're saying, but also, I guess in a sense, yes, I already know. I'm fully aware that yes, we're spirit in a body. I know that, but at the same time, you have to define you as a person, and that's where people don't understand it, right? If I say to you, who are you? How are you going to break that down? Me, I could see myself, I'm a loving and caring people. I like to help people, right? I strive to be a better person. I'm self-taught. I'm self-aware. Yes, those are some of the makeups of who I am. It's not what I do, it's who I am or where I come from. It's who I am as a person.
Not
I
saying
know
that.
what I will and I won't accept in my life. Like, I don't want toxic people around me. I don't want disrespectful people around me. All of this. I don't argue and fuss and fight with people. Like, I stay away from that because that is not good to my emotional and mental well-being. So I know who I am. I know what I stand for.
You know, I think this is an interesting back and forth because I'm an observer myself here. But what I think is happening, he's not uncomfortable with how he's expressing, how he's describing himself. But I understand where you're coming from because it does rub you the wrong way, in a sense. Not that you're taking offense to it, but because of how you identify yourself, you might be uncomfortable with how he identifies himself. But being a human being is an individual experience, and so
Yes.
as I said, words and semantics come and change with with each generation and all the things and all the stuff. But both of you are right. In this context, is just how he perceives himself and describes himself. It is okay for him. No, he's not going to call you a thing. He's not going to call you an it. Now, if he turned it around and said you are an it or a thing, now you could then say, hey, I don't want that description. But if he chooses to say that I am that I am, it's just his way of expressing. You understand?
I don't
No,
think
no, no, no,
anybody
no. This
is
is this is
literally
not
saying.
an attack or trying to change anyone's perception, right? Like, I appreciate his views. I appreciate everyone's views in here because listen, I'm a person who's always trying to learn. I'm always trying to learn. That's what sets me apart from a lot of people. I'm always on the quest for new information.
And see, that's kind of what I was gonna say. Like, I don't think anybody is feeling like any uncomfortability. I don't even think they're more of trying to prove one to other. They have came to a head to where they basically both understand that, okay, this is the word you use, but this is what I meant when I said it. So both of them are just explaining themselves from what they meant when they were actually saying and basically going into detail about it. But I don't think anybody is viewing the other as being uncomfortable about what's being said.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we are talking about the same concept, regardless of what word he uses or which word I use. So he, from his standpoint, he uses the word who. But this is what I was saying now. When you say the word who, when I say who are you, most people will respond to that describing a personality. But when I say what are you, so even if your concept was to look at it from the standpoint of a personality, once I say what are you, you're now gonna be like looking at my question like what. You see? So now let's get to the meat of the matter where you said I. When we all say I, So you use the word I use the word I, she uses it. What are we referring to now, or who are we referring to when we use the word I? This is the next question, because now we're going to learn the nature of the truth of ourselves. So when you use the word I, what exactly, what is the nature of that I?
Well, me if I use the word I'm referring to me. That's what I'm thinking anyway.
Remember, like I call you Danny Boy. Everyone calls you Danny
Hmm.
Boy, but you
Right.
calls yourself I. Now, what is the I? Who exactly is the me or the I? Point to something specific. Like, are you referring to the glass? There has to be something specific that you're talking about, right? Who or what is that
Why?
specific?
I guess I haven't figured that part out yet. Because I guess I'm stuck on who.
All right. So you see,
When I use the term I, like, I mean, if you're saying I goes beyond me looking at I as, I mean, I am or I'm going to whatever. Like, I don't understand how to get beyond that.
There you go. I like this
okay.
because it makes you stop and think when the question is asked in a certain way. And I like it because it makes me personally, when it's asked in that way, it makes me stop and think, really, what am I? Who am I? Because automatically, when someone just asks you who you are, we all have a pre-programmed answer based on where we are in life to answer people about who we are, right? But when it's asked in a certain way, you notice how you said you kind of glitched it out a bit when you were saying, well, like, I'm like, what? Like, what? It makes you stop, don't it? You have to process that because you're like, what do you mean, what am I?
He manifested the same thing. So now we can talk about this I. So here's my question now, Danny Boy. Listen to this statement. I see the glass and I touch the glass. No, the same eye that saw the glass, is it the same eye that touched the glass? Because remember, now we're going to find out the nature of the eye. I saw the glass and I touched the glass. The same eye that saw the glass is not the same eye that touched the glass, right? So, what is this eye? Internalize the question first, because we're finding out what
Well,
is the eye that.
well, it sounds to me like you're talking about senses or your sensory perception.
Well,
Because yeah,
he's
I
more of
see the
talking about like because see, depending like basically based off how you talk, I can only say that maybe the way that you will understand what he's saying is okay. So you know how the Egyptians, when they speak of the eye, they're speaking of like how Ra and how things are going into like the literal self. That's more of how he's saying it than like what you're thinking. Oh, okay. Well, are you talking about the actual sensory and all of that? You know what I mean?
I get that. Okay, then all right. Then explain this to me then. If you see the glass, you touch the glass, then where is that going now? In order to determine what the eye is.
Goes back to what I'm saying. So when you ask a person, who are you? What you'll notice is the answer is in the first word that they utter. I am. Anything else that comes after that is describing a personality. We Every statement you use, you say I am. That's exactly what you are. You start it by defining what you really are. I. So the eye that saw the ball is the eye of what? Awareness. The eye of consciousness. I am aware of the glass and I am aware of the experience of touching the glass. So the same eye that saw the glass is the same eye that what? Is aware of the experience of touching. So all of these that you mentioned about perception, no, Judith mentioned about perceptions earlier. These are all perceptions, but you are not your perceptions. You are the one behind your perceptions, the one that is aware, and that awareness is always there. Even when you sleep, awareness never goes away. The mind goes away, but awareness is present. Empress, I saw you unmute. Go ahead. I'm gonna get some water.
Yes, I was just saying that we are the observer, and and I said it's interesting because, like I said, because we're just used to living in a certain kind of way, we are not able to transmute certain things, and it is good when we have discussions like this because it can unearth a lot of things about us. So, for me personally, like he's saying, when identifying the fact that you are just the observer in everything. So I'm observing, or I'm observing what I'm experiencing. You understand me? So therefore, I know who I am in this whole process or in this whole experience, and I can then dissect it and deal with it, or find a way to deal with whatever it is that I'm experiencing. But we have to, as human beings, we are created to label everything. So we find ways and means to describe whatever it is that is happening.
Yeah, but here's what I'm perceiving what he's saying as. Now, it sounds to me like it's just consciousness is what you're basically speaking of now, right? Or levels of consciousness, or how you perceive or interpret the world around you, right? But that's just that's just your consciousness. You is what I see you're talking about when you say I, or I touch a glass, or your eyes see the glass. Your eyes see the glass, and you touch the glass. Now, that's just consciousness to me, because that's also your sensories, and your sensories, which is your eyes and your hands, are relaying information back to you, and you have to interpret that consciously, what it is you're seeing. Now, as he said earlier, if you ask someone, like, who are they, and they start giving you a multitude of things, well, that's problematic as well, because you, in order to be fully conscious, you see, that's the difference now. In order to be fully conscious, you have to be able to break down information and compress it in a way where you can make sense of it quickly, or you can determine. You see, that's the thing. There's so much parts to us as human beings. We know that we're some of many things. Now, the conscious part of it is to be able to break down quickly and understand all your feelings, all your emotions, and compress it into who are you as a person, who you are as a person, and be able to sum that up quickly. Because listen, the human mind, knowledge, everything is vast. It's more than what you see, more than what you understand. The entire world around you. So you have to be able to, in order to manage all this information, you have to be able to compress it, or become more consciously aware. Right? It's kind of like people out there chasing all of these external things and thinking that it's going to make them happy. Meanwhile, consciously, if you look at everything from a conscious or deeper level, you're going to realize, like, well, what is all this you're running down? Because you are going to pass away, and when you do, none of this is going to matter. But you chase your life chasing down all this stuff that doesn't matter. So it's a level of consciousness and able to compress that and see the world for the way it is quickly, instead of being an emotional being who's just running wild through the world, and everything that your eyes see is what you're consciously determined as fact, or it, or what you need. Meanwhile, it's not. Now, that's a person who's a surface level person. They're not consciously aware. That's my interpretation of that.
Interpretation. You said a few things, but I think you kind of, maybe because you're in the psychological world, and the psychological world doesn't go deeper or beyond the point of view of psychology. But I was going kind of where the spirit or the immaterial aspect of our existence, because you mentioned there are many aspects of our existence, many layers of existence. But guess what? All these layers are made out of the same consciousness. For example, even the ocean, the waves, is the wave made out of something separate from the sea? It comes out of the sea. So just like I was talking about with the depression, right? It's still gonna go back to how we identify ourselves. So it's the same as I am aware of my experience of depression, but I am not the depression itself. So the depression is like a content of my experience. It's made out of the same awareness. It's made out of the same consciousness. It does that. Does the depression exist outside of your consciousness? A person who's experiencing depression, does the depression take place outside of consciousness? No. So as long as we identify ourselves as the substance that we are, the truth, the unchangeable truth that we are, then we will understand that everything else is objects, whether it be feelings, emotions, whatever it is, everything else is just objects. Find what you really are, the thing that never changes. So it's always going to go back to whatever name you want to call it, but that I is always going to be the I of awareness, the I of consciousness, the I of the self, the I of this, whatever name you place on it, is always going to go back to one reality, regardless of whatever names we place on it. So it goes beyond the mind. For example, the glass is in front of me. My eyes is the medium. You don't see through the eyes. You don't see through the eyes. It's the medium, but it's the mind that sees through, because the mind is behind the eyes. Now here's this statement now, Danny boy. When you say you don't understand something, if I'm explaining this to you and you say you don't understand, what is it about you that don't understand? Your mind doesn't understand. Am I correct?
Well,
Think about the question
here's
and answer.
well, here's the thing. My mind may not understand it because of my lack of or you see, there's two things at play. It could be a lack of knowledge, or it could be a level of consciousness. It all depends. I think it's subject to interpretation, right? I mean, you said a while ago that you're trying to understand. You're talking about the I, the things that never change, and I think that is not. I think there's something wrong with that statement right there, because the fact of the matter is everything changes and evolves on this planet. So to say you're searching or you're at the place where or you got to look at the I, the thing that never changes. I don't know. I think that's I mean that's a bridge too far for me, because everything changes. Everything you see and can touch changes.
All right, let's go back a little bit. We talked about the mind. When I asked you about if the mind understands, right? No, if the mind understands what I'm explaining, or whether your mind does not understand, somebody knows that you don't understand. So what is it that is different from your mind that knows that the mind doesn't understand? Something else has to be there. So this is why I was giving you the analogy that whatever is before the eyes see it. The mind is behind the eyes. The mind sees the eyes, but something else is behind the mind to know that the mind understands it or the mind does not understand it. It's not the mind itself that knows it doesn't understand. There's something behind that can see, okay, whether it understands or it doesn't understand. So can you understand what I'm saying? There is something behind the mind
No,
that the mind cannot relate to.
no, I don't believe that, because as I said earlier, to me it's a level of consciousness. It's a level of consciousness based upon what you're saying. Because listen, not because you're saying that it means it's factual, or because I don't understand something because you're telling it to me that makes it true, or because I don't understand it, then the problem is me. Maybe the information that you're giving me is not relevant, factual, or also it's new information that you're introducing me to that I'm not aware of, or
I
I
think
don't
it's
have the
more
knowledge
of
or
logic,
understanding.
though. I think it's
Huh?
more of logic. I think it's more of the way that the words that he's using, the way that you're used to using those words, and the way that you comprehend those words is kind of hard to comprehend or understand where he's going when he's using words you probably wouldn't use to describe what he's trying to say.
Possibility.
That's what, yeah, right. I was gonna say that earlier, because remember earlier when I said it's how he expresses it, because I can get where you're coming from, Danny boy, and I can also get where he's coming from. Basically, your awareness never changes, but what you are aware of will change. You are aware of will change.
Right.
What that you perceive will change. What you are conscious of will change, but your consciousness itself never changes. And so once we get to that understanding, then we can look at what we experience and be able to effectively deal with them, right? So the awareness itself never changes. It's what you are aware of that might evolve and grow and change, but you are that awareness. You are that person, you are that thing that is aware of what is happening, that is perceiving everything. And so once you can see that that is what you are, then now when circumstances come upon you, you will be able to not, it's not that you're going to just overnight get over certain things. No, it is just that you're now able to surgically and clinically address certain things in your life in a different way and not personalize it so much that it becomes you.
Believe in
Well,
anything. Okay.
no, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to add to what you're saying. Like, you see, and that's the thing. Awareness comes from the consciousness, your level of consciousness. So, I don't know. And you're only privy to what you know. And you can try to go beyond that. And that brings you deeper into more consciousness. Other than that, it's like it's like when I hear people say they're trying to be like God or they're searching for God or they want to be God-like. Like, I mean, I think, what do you mean you're trying to be God-like or you want to be like God or you know what I mean? What are you really searching for? I think the first thing is try to understand the world around you and the people in the world around you, and you will get there quicker than you will think you can try to be this God-like or, you know, try to search for this God. That's what I believe.
Shalom, one shot is smalls. This goes back to everything that we basically concluded, because the mind can only perceive matter, and this is the reason why I don't know where your psychology go if it goes beyond the mind. I don't know if you believe in spirits or anything, if you anything behind the mind, but what I'm saying is the mind can only perceive matter. So the spirit does not have an objective quality. This is why, from the standpoint of our mental state, we cannot see the spirit, we cannot relate to it. There's a nothingness there that the mind cannot relate to. It's like, okay, there's an object here, the mind can relate to it. Now, let's take deep sleep, for example. When the mind goes away, you know what goes away to? The world of objects. For example, if I ask you about your experience of sleep, what can you tell me about your experience of sleep? The only thing mind can relate to is objects. So for example, you'll know that, oh, you went to sleep 10 o'clock last night, you wake up 7 o'clock this morning, and those are the two objects you remember. But during the state of the sleep, what is your actual experience? What goes away? Where did that awareness go? For example, when you're sleeping, if all of us are sleeping and there's a voice saying, Danny boy, you know who's gonna respond first? Danny boy is most likely going to respond, because your awareness is always there. It never goes away. So do you go beyond the mind in your world of psychology? Do you believe in anything behind the material aspect of reality, Danny boy?
No, of course. I believe there's a spiritual. I mean, don't get me wrong. We are a spiritual being. We are a spiritual being. I believe that 100%. Which, as we said earlier, we're spiritual being in a body. So, of course, like I said, there's a greater force, which most people will refer to as God. So I believe there's a greater force, because my level of consciousness, by how I perceive the world, tells me that, or makes me believe that, there is a greater force, because everything is perfect in its balance. Something had to create it, right? So yes, there is a spiritual aspect, and I believe in that 100%.
The God that created the universe. I'm asking about in your layers of existence. You know, you're aware of a body. You know that there's a mind. I'm asking you, do you believe there's anything else apart from what the experience of the mind and the body? Not the universal God, the personal spirit, immaterial aspect of you. You understand my question?
But that would be, I mean, that would be your spirit. What else is there?
Whether you believe that that actually exists, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, well, yeah, because as I said, we are a spiritual being. As they say, we're a spiritual being having an earthly experience.
And because you mentioned about the perceptions and so forth, so perceptions are veils that block our awareness. Like the reason why we cannot see things for what they are is because of levels of perception. Like we were misunderstanding each other earlier when you used the word "who are you," but I used the word "what are you," and even though we were referring to the same reality, but the perceptions were different. So there's one reality but many perceptions. You see it comes back to the same thing. Judith or Empress, you guys have anything?
Yeah, that's what earlier. Your self-awareness will dictate what you can and cannot do. All right, I have one example and another example in my life. One example with Peter and when he walked on water, when Christ was there, and his awareness was on Christ. His awareness was when Christ told him he could do this. He was in a state of awareness that yes, I can do this. But the minute he walked out and he took a couple of steps, his perception changed because he knows in reality this should not be normally possible. And the minute he thought differently, that is when his reality changed. Him start sink, you understand, and he needed help. So in real life, that is how it is as well. I went through a bout of sickness and I could not understand, doctors could not understand because I was just vomiting water and they couldn't understand what was going on. And I had to be reminded in memory that, oh, remember that you can heal yourself. Remember that you can concentrate the energy inside your body and remove it yourself. And I did this as a child through instructions from a voice that I just heard. Now, if you tell that to a regular human being, you're crazy, a foolishness that, you understand me? And so I had to overcome those fears because you grow up and people tell you certain things are mad and you can't do it in order for me to be able to manifest that. Now, when Jesus told them, yeah, everything you see me doing now, you can do this and even greater things, people did not take him literally because they're believing it only can manifest in Christ, and that is not true.
This is why it goes back to the first thing we need to understand is understand ourselves on a personal level. Then we understand reality on a universal level, and that's where the problem is. We know everything about the sun, the moon, the stars, the heavens, the earth, under the sea, but we don't know the truth of what we are, or as Danny would say, who we are. So this is where the big problem is, because when you think about the spirit, right? How many spirits are really in us? Is it one spirit? Think about it. We have a body and we have a spirit, right? The spirit and the body coming together forms the soul. But guess what? Every two elements need something to bind them together. For example, if you take flour and you take cornmeal and you make them together, you bind them together, you use water, but you cannot find the water in it. When you make a dough, flour and cornmeal, you cannot find the water in it anymore, but the water is in it, right? No, it's the same thing. There's a spirit, there's a body, but it took another third element to bind the two together. So when a person dies, the physical body goes to the dust. That spirit that binded the thing together, it goes back to the Most High. So we have to understand that you that spirit we call da'ath in Hebrew. It's called knowing or knowledge. That is the knowledge that you're talking about. That is behind, that is beyond the spirit of man. There's another spirit that we have to unlock, and this is where the spirits of God meet that spirit in man, and we manifest the powers of God. They don't teach these things in Western religions. They don't teach it because guess what? You would understand that you carry the potencies to manifest the attributes of God. You're gonna say something, Danny boy?
You hear me? Yeah. So yes. One thing I learned from psychology is that we have the ability, you have the ability to basically create anything you want to create. Like one of the things I learned from psychology is whatever you focus on, your path will become clear. So what that means is whatever it is you say you want to do, you can actually do it. Because once you focus on that thing or project or whatever you wanna do or whatever you want to accomplish, if you focus on that, yes, your path will slowly and surely become clear, and the things you need to make it happen will slowly start to appear, right? Especially when you hear people talk about manifesting, that's what it is. Whatever you focus on and work towards, that path will become clear to you, right? So, yeah, when you talk about so I fully understand this. I mean, you'll call it the spiritual act. That's a spiritual aspect, yes, because people may not understand that you do have the ability to shape the world to what you want it to be. It could be the same thing you're referring to as the God complex, in a sense, in human beings. But my I don't know. I'm not gonna be. I'm not that ambitious to say I'm gonna set myself on a path to be God-like or to bend the world in a God way. I think I'd rather my goals to be more attainable or more reachable.
Well, see, just to kind of like go in on what you're saying, it's not even like embracing that you're the literal God or the literal creator. It's more about understanding that the things that you are doing is being done, or the power that you're possessing is from the creator. So it's not that you are doing it, it's not coming from you, which also goes back to what he was constantly asking you, what is beyond you, like what is actually there. So that it's the creator power that's basically manifesting through you. So people calling it God-like or God complex, those are people who are one seeking power, and they're basically they whole thing is to come around like glorifying themselves. That's kind of why people don't actually be able to obtain that power, because they're removing the creator, they're removing the source out of that power.
Hmm.
So I understand from the world of psychology you might use different terms, and she said while you were talking I was thinking the same scripture. She quoted it, as a man thinketh so is he. So it's still going back to the potencies. So your power lies in your attention. So when we are experiencing depression, what we are doing is we're giving over our attention to the depression itself, and it's taking away the power from us, the being. So now, once your power is invested in something negative, guess what? Your energy starts draining. That fire in you, it starts quenching. It's like pouring water on the fire that's burning in you. So all of these things are doing the same thing. So once you start to withdraw your attention from the depression itself and start to turn it around and look on yourself and see you for what you are, you know what happens to the depression? It becomes weakened. The power is gone because your power is in your attention. Like she mentioned about Peter walking on the water, his attention was on that God-given spirit, that life-giving spirit in him, or on Christ, whichever way you want to put it. His attention was towards something greater than his own belief, his own self. But guess what? Once you start to doubt that spirit, that capability inside you, or that potential, that's when we start to falter. It's regardless of how we word it, you can see that we're talking about the same concept. So it exists in the world of psychology. You term it different, but the concept that we are talking about is the same. Whether you just want to focus on that and you manifest it, or whichever way we focus on God and manifest it, we are dealing with the same concept. And if we were to go back to the beginning when we all spoke the same language, whatever words, we would be using the same words. It's because of these confounding of languages. Now we can be talking about the same concept, but we are using different words, and this is why it's perceived different. But in reality, we're talking about the same things. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely right. I agree with you 100%. Now, to as you were saying about depression. Now, here's the thing, and you see all of this. This is why I'm not even sure how to even say this, but if like all of this comes down to level of consciousness, right? And if people don't figure out who they are, now, I don't know how you're going to get there, how people are going to get there. But for me, my life was in shambles some years ago. And it's psychology that made me put everything together, studying psychology. You know what I mean? So that worked for me. My belief is if people want to understand themselves and understand the world around them, they should study some form of psychology and human behavior, which helps you with human behavior, and it also take you further down the path to understand the world around you. Now, some people will, I don't know, maybe the Bible works for you or whatever your religious denomination is, whatever it might work for you. But I mean, that still is not gonna bring you to that level of conscious that you need to understand the world. That's my opinion. You might get some spiritual understanding from it, whatever sorts. It has some good lessons in it, but I think you need more than that if you want to be a fully conscious person and understand the world you live in
You
and
know,
who you are as a person.
Dad, I don't mean to cut you, but since you made that point, I've been thinking this. All knowledge is derived from what the Word of God is saying. It's many arms of the same doctrine, basically, because even when it is termed in psychological terms, we have to understand it is rooted and grounded in a lot of the lessons in the Bible. Now, I'm not negating the need for psychology, because I'm a girl that loves psychology and I would study everything metaphysical if I could from now till a morning too. So I love that aspect of life as well, because there is value in it. But every time I come upon any new knowledge that I have attained, I can always find roots of it in the Word of God. So even though it's now being viewed psychologically, because now we can map the brain and we can see where certain parts of the brain respond to a certain stimuli and all the things and all the stuff, which is great because it aids us in understanding ourselves. Everything is already there. It's just like when man first discovered that the earth was not flat, for example, and there is debates out there, but we're not going to debate that, right? But before and all these planets, before we scientifically proved that there were other planets out there, the Bible already spoke of other places that existed. So the root of all knowledge in science, it comes from the Bible.
Here's my problem with religion doctrine or dogma and all that. I think is a bit problematic. As we know, there was a young lady here who was American. I don't know if she's still here, but as we know, well, black Jamaican, like we're cut from the same cloth. But here's the thing, though, we know that most of the time religion is not used to enlighten you; it's used to control you. That's 90% of what religion is used to do. And even the Bible, Christianity. So I find that problematic because that doesn't help people. I believe that dumbs down people. That's not raising their level of consciousness. That's just dictating to people and keeping them pacified. So there's my problem. Yes, it can point you in a lot of directions or hint at a lot of things, but I think you need more than that. You need to go beyond that, but you have to have the level of consciousness in order to go beyond that, or else you'll just be, what some people might refer to as a useful idiot.
Yeah, but I'm not speaking from a religious standpoint. I get what you're because we do often use religion, and there's religious dogma and doctrine. I'm not speaking from that standpoint at all, because I am by no means a religious person. There is some connotation to that, but I get what you're saying. What he's trying to say is that there needs to be some basis in reality to everything, and that's what people don't understand. Even though the Bible exists and the Word of God exists, if you are not able to find basis for reality in these words, then you now become a religious zealot. You become like the
Right.
Pharisees that don't know anything about anything, and you're just using words for using words. You understand me? But once you are able to see that these words are not just words to be used to control people, or for you to, I get irritated when I see some Christians behave a certain kind of way, because I can tell the level of understanding they have. But you have to be patient with people who are at a level of awareness that you are not, or no longer at. You understand me?
Yes.
So there is religious dogma out there, and that is where the stigma is. That's why people don't even want to take up the Bible, because of what is portrayed out there by people who claim to know the truth. The point is, you yourself decided when you were going through what you're going through to study psychology, and it has helped you. That is great. If someone is going through what they're going through, if I don't rely on a pastor or preacher or another Christian to tell me anything about the word of God, I myself must seek it and find understanding in it and find a way to make it practical in my life instead of reading it. And I always tell people, you can read 10 layers down into one line of scripture. You can read it now and it means one thing, and you delve deeper and you find more depth and meaning into it. You understand me? But not everybody read with wisdom and understanding. A lot of people are just in the system. You understand?
And this is where, as Cosmic was saying earlier, this is where I could see with them, or my argument with consciousness kicks into play, because it's consciousness and the levels of consciousness, which is your levels of understanding. Yeah, like you're saying, but do those people have, most people can pick up a book and read it, but do they understand what they're reading? Or how it is for religion most of the time. You have someone, an imam, a pastor, telling you their beliefs, dictating their beliefs, projecting their beliefs onto you. And you, if you're not able to read, not only read, but comprehend, decipher the information that's being given to you, then you can't really blame those people for their ignorance, because that's just where their levels of consciousness ends for them, by choice, by their choice.
It's we can always go to strip layers, because one thing can never change is truth. Reality is always going to be there. So different layers of perceptions can be above it, but once you start to strip down, and this is how we come to truth. We don't go to truth by trying to read more books and more books and more books. No, we go to do what? To remove what is untrue, and the only thing that will remain is that which is true. Just like we were dealing with ourselves, you strip the body, you strip the mind, you strip the opinions, the personalities, the ideologies, the philosophies, and that which remain, that cannot be stripped, that is what is real, because what is real cannot be changed. So it's going to come back to the same point. What is real cannot be changed. So there's always something unchangeable in a changeable world. So it's the reality is always going to be the same, regardless of how we word it, how we try to put it in, whatever it is. The reality is always going to be reality. It doesn't need a mate. It doesn't need anything, because the nature of reality defines reality itself. Now, you mentioned about religion and control. Can psychology be used as a tool to control people? Because if it can be used as a tool or a means to control people, then I can, from my standpoint, say psychology can be a religion. The education system can be used as a tool for controlling the mental state of a person. So education system for me is also a religion. Politics is another system. All of these are religions in my eyes. The workforce, the labor force, they go into the school for these things, the colleges. For me, from my perception, all of these are still religions. They still come with dogma or whatever you call it. So not because a person is into psychology or whatever, that doesn't make them free from what you call religion. If you guys understand my point, it's all religion. Your way of defining things is going to be according to the psychologist that taught you what this thing is called. Just like, for example, when I ask you about the what are the eye, what is the eye, you never had a concrete definition, because psychology never taught you a definition for that eye. But when I said it to you, now you have something to think about. So if you guys flowing with what I'm saying here, what do we really call a religion? We just equate, oh, Bible, it's a religion. No, we are familiar with, yeah, go ahead, Empress.
No, I'm agreeing.
Let me ask you a question. What is your truth?
God is reality. Reality is what it is. That cannot be changed. That is truth for me. God is reality. Anything that is real, that's it for me. Anything that can be altered, that's not reality.
But you're contradicting yourself
Go ahead, explain.
because you just said a while ago everything can be changed and everything can be used for whatever. So that which I even said it earlier. When you what was it you were talking about? And I said no, because everything is subject to change on this planet. But now you're saying God is the truth, and like that can be changed.
Yeah,
So
so
that's a
just like
contradiction.
no, listen again. Just like it says in the book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 6, it says, I am the God of Jacob, I change not. So I'm saying these that we see physically with perceptions, whether seeing, hearing, taste, touch, these are all perceptions and these are appearances. Appearances do change. The thing that does not change is the thing that is observing the different aspects of perception. So that's what I'm saying. So when you look at a stormy weather or a calm weather or a blue sky or a cloudy sky, these are appearances of the one reality, but that thing never changes, and that is real. That's what I'm saying. Like our personalities, who you are with your wife might be a different person with your children, might be a different person at work, might be a different person at a certain office. These are different aspects of your personality. These changes, these are appearances, but what you are is static, is fixed. I don't know if you can understand the point, the concept I'm trying to, that something has to be fixed to perceive that other things are changing.
What is that?
It goes back to what we were saying, is that immaterial aspect of the human being, that the spirit called knowing. It is the spirit that knows. It is the spirit that is aware. That spirit, whatever you call it, that is what I'm talking about. It never changes. So the more we strip ourselves of our perceptions of reality, it's the more our awareness becomes more enlightened, because perceptions is the darkness that veils the truth of our reality. So the more you start to remove perceptions, the more we start to remove perceptions, like you were saying, people identify themselves with their depressions, right? But after they start to remove those beliefs, oh, I'm no longer my depression. Now you start to see yourself more clear and you're becoming more liberated from the depression. So it's the same stripping away that I'm talking about, the falling away. You're no longer identifying yourself with your mind. You no longer identify yourself with your body. Now you understand that you are what you are. So that's it for me. It's more of going backwards inside more than going out into books. Most people want to study more books. No. You go back and do what? How you educate somebody? By removing the ignorance. You don't educate a person by don't pour in more knowledge. You educate them by removing the ignorance. And once ignorance is removed, what manifests? Knowledge. Because knowledge and ignorance goes against each other like light and dark. Once you're removing the darkness, once you add in light, darkness goes away. So once you're stripping these layers of darkness, the light is going to come forth. So the light comes from beyond the darkness. So this is how we go back to the scriptures where it says the darkness was upon the face of the deep. Then he said what? Let there be light. So the light comes from beyond the darkness of our perceptions. So we internalize the scripture. We don't teach religions. We internalize. There has to be an internal reality. And that's what we teach. As you mentioned about truth, that's what truth is for us. We integrate reality in our day-to-day experiences and manifest. Like you said in psychology, you focus on what you want. That's the same thing. We internalize and we possess these capabilities and manifest.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, still we are at the same place, because I fully understand that. I think it's just the way we arrive at that destination. It's slightly different, but yeah, I fully understand that, because
That's let me just say something to what you just said. It's many paths to knowledge. It's one destination, but it's many paths to knowledge. So you might go through psychology, I might go through this person goes through that, but we're all gonna arrive at one destiny. You understand? There are many paths. So that's it. So the more we start to get rid of certain perceptions, the more we start to see perceptions for what they are, it's the more we are going to be coming into one. So guess what? I'm no longer seeing you as a mind and a body. I'm seeing you as an entity, as a being, as a spirit. And this is why we can love each other. I can love you as my neighbor because I don't have to like you as a person. I don't need to like you as a person or a personality, but I have to love you. You see what I'm saying? So
That's when your consciousness kicks in, your deeper level of consciousness. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
most people come together and try to listen out each other rather than, oh, as you speak, I want to stop you to get my point across. This is why most of us are so ignorant. Like, we could be saying the same thing and we're arguing when we are really saying the same thing in a different way. So many parts, the same knowledge, the same destination. You know, so if we could communicate this way with everybody one to one, regardless of how we view reality, we will see that we share one thing in common. I share my I, you share your I, we all share that I in common. If you should take a picture of your mind, maybe you're thinking about a box, another person thinking about going to work, another person, these are going to be many different images, but remove those images. The spirit is going to be one consciousness. No objects, no thoughts, no feelings, is one entity there. We all share that in common. Yeah, you can go ahead if you want to add something.
You're absolutely right. I agree with you. I agree with you. But it's a getting there for people. I mean, that's why, I mean, you know, from with my level of understanding and understanding the world and everything, I mean, I pretty much don't even deal with people that much anymore. Because when you get to this level of consciousness, it's hard to deal with people, ignorant people. Put it that way.
You ever heard the saying that says, "My student is ready, the teacher appears"? I remember going on my journey and recognizing, and I started very young because of the parents that I have. But I recognized very early that not many people my age had the same thought process as I, and it was a process of growth that I had to go through to let me know that it's okay to exit yourself from certain circles. And what I see happening is automatically you attract people of like minds, and so when you find those people, then you can grow more because you're sharing and you're learning from each other as you are getting to know each other or going through whatever conversations you are having. So it becomes more effortless. But you see, when you try to struggle to get people up to your level, it gives you more heartache and headache than to just let people be in their level of awareness. And certainly there are times when people who are still around you but not at your level of consciousness will recognize where you are, and they may ask questions, and you then now have an opportunity to try to help them to understand certain things a different kind of way. But in the meantime, once you are at a level of consciousness that you no longer find the same kind of things useful to you, you will start attracting the same people that are at your consciousness level or higher.
People are in
No,
this
no,
society. Oh, go ahead, Danny. Go
no,
ahead.
no. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was saying in this society, what we call maturity, like what she just explained. Maturity causes us to deal with things different, like your level of maturity and my level of maturity, because there are people out there who, even if they perceive that they share different views, it goes into this debate or this strong argument or this, until it even moves to go more personal, where they start to insult each other's character. But we who have a certain level of understanding and know how to relate to each other, we could do this in peace. And you see, we come back to say, oh, but wait, we share certain things in common and we are still at peace, even though we might have different other ideas and a different scale that we haven't talked about, but we can find commonality and embrace it. And this is the maturity that us as black men need to get to, that, okay, whether you think that this is a glass or you think that this is a plastic, we can still find a commonality where we can still deal with each other as a being, that rather than just be fighting over whether this be plastic or glass. So that's the maturity that we need to get to, so we can deal with everyone on a certain level, regardless of the diverse beliefs. Yeah, go ahead now, Danny.
Well, you're 100% right. But you see, the challenge is this, and I believe this is what they call cognitive dissonance as well. Because I mean, if someone believes what they believe, and you introduce them to different information to change their belief, they get, what happens? They get defensive. because now you're telling them something different from what they've known either their whole life or what they have trained themselves to fully believe. And now you're telling them, no, that's not the way it is. This is a better way, or this is how it really is. Just like in religion, you go to someone who's steeped in religion and you try to give them some different information or tell them something that will shift their thinking from their religion, and they'll get very defensive.
It's not
But
fair for a human being to be
To
like that.
this,
Sorry to cut you. It's not fair to be like that, but depending on where you are in your growth process, because in my earlier years, yes, I was like that. It's not like I want to be proven right. It's like I had this desire to have my peers as awake as I was, and then you will get after there's another gear after this. There's a gear that is going to get to the point where you're content to let people be, not that you want them to be ignorant or whatever, but you recognize that there's a flow to things. And so it may push you off in the beginning, but after a while it's like, okay, I'm content to be at this level of consciousness, and I'm content to let that person be at that level of consciousness, and I don't feel the desire to evangelize, because whether or not you're doing it psychologically or in a spiritual way, or whether it is an awareness, new age awareness or whatever, it's still an evangelistic spirit that you have the desire to have somebody open their eyes to a certain level of consciousness. So the Christians are evangelizing in another way, you still are doing the evangelizing thing. So once you get to the point, because I got to that point where I was like, oh, it's okay for them to exist in their ignorance, or what I perceive to be their ignorance. And you know what tends to happen when I relax my brain? The people who are still around, because those who will fall away will fall away, but those who remain, at some point in time, curiosity peaks. At some point in time, a question is asked. At some point in time, a door is open, and then we can have a conversation. You understand me? But those who are meant to fall away, they automatically will. And, you don't need to grieve over them, It's just where they are.
no,
how it
absolutely. I even here, I only plan to come into this live I was listening for a bit, but I only plan to come say that those two little words, and I'm out, because like I said, it how open our people are to different information. I'm open now. Once the conversation started taking place, I said, wait a minute, these are some thinking people. Let me hear what they have to say, because that's who I am. I'm open to new information. I want to see what else I can learn from someone else, or what else they can introduce me to. Now,
and you
that's where
see,
knowledge come from.
right, and you see where it goes, because you only came in to drop a few words, but yet you are still here. So it's that connection that goes beyond our thinking and feeling. This is what we were talking about earlier. You see, we connected on a deeper level than our mental state, because we might have two different perceptions of reality, but there's something deeper that binds us together, whether we can see it or not. That there's this immaterial, there's this energetic feel that we can connect to, regardless, despite of our mental state. So it comes back to that same thing, So I think it's a very good discussion. Most people, as you mentioned about controlling, or she said evangelizing, what most people are trying to do is, okay, we're having a discussion. It's not about me making you understand what I'm saying, or making you see what I want you to see. It's about, okay, I'm relating a point to you. Maybe 3 years from now, you're going to say, oh, that was what he was talking about. That once we understand that this is how reality works, you learn to deal with other people's ego. And in order for you to be in a certain state of maturity or consciousness, the first thing you're going to have to know is how to relate to other people's egos. If you don't know that, you're going to be in a big problem. This is why people who are less mature than you can feed up on your energy. Because guess what? You start to become like them. You're against this behavior, but no, they get you to become like them. You were never grounded in something. Not because you get upset, it doesn't mean that I'm going to get upset too. Not because you punch the wall, it doesn't mean that I'm going to punch the wall too. You see, there's always a separation. You don't get attached to these things. So it's a level of maturity that we get to. We don't do the mind controlling stuff. We don't use anything to control people. If you're at this state of consciousness, as you always say, that's where you are. If I can come down to where you are, or if you can come down to where I am, and we meet each other in a common ground, then we can still work together. We don't need to fight. Oh, you need to believe what I'm telling you here. No, you don't need to believe. The only thing that you need to do is die. Everything else is optional. You see what I'm saying? So we just have to get to that state where you don't need to control a person. You, as you say, you sow the seed, and that's it. It will sprout probably not today, not tomorrow, but maybe next week, not next month, next year. Maybe when a certain tragic event comes up in your life, that's when that seed sprouts. You see what I'm saying? Just like when he said, "No, the cock is gonna crow when you deny me 3 times." Even when he was denying him, he couldn't see it. But as soon as the event happened where the cock crow, it brought recognition to his cognition. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes it takes a certain event in our life to bring us to that state of awareness. We need to kind of get out of that state of comfort that we are in. Yeah. So I want to
Yeah,
thank you guys. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just saying, yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't weaponize my knowledge against people, and like I said, if someone is like the conversation here, like if people are in the mindset and the headspace where they're what they're saying is interesting and all of this, yeah, I might join in. The other thing is that might be pertaining to what you're saying, based upon the level of consciousness here, is that that's why I don't let any. Well, I don't. It's not that I don't let, but I'm at the level where I'm at. Nothing really bothers me because the level of consciousness allows me to understand that nothing we see around us matters. The only thing that matters is, to me, is if we're able to help someone or impart something positive on someone so that they could either help themselves or help others. That's the only thing that matters. Nothing matters in this world. And, hopefully people will understand that one day.
Yeah, let me just add something. This is what I always say to the folks that have been following the way that I teach forever. I always tell them you have to be able to walk away from any situation, any object, a job, and be at peace walking away. If you buy the car today and you have to walk away from it, you have to learn to have that capability in you. You see, you destroy attachments. So if you do not reach that state, you will be in a lot of trouble because of your attachment. It's gonna cause you to suffer. So that's where it is. You have to reach that state where you can let go and suffer. You're gonna feel this thing of it, of course. Just like ending a relationship, you're gonna feel this thing of that end, or losing this great job that was taking care of all your. You're gonna feel this thing of it, but you're gonna live above your suffering. You're not going to be consumed by, oh, I lost my job, I lost my relationship, I lost my. No, you're not going to be consumed in that thought. So you have to learn to love everything enough to where you can let them go. Let it go, whatever it is. Yeah, so
Absolutely, man.
yeah,
Absolutely.
there's so much freedom, Attachment brings suffering. You see?
Ah,
Yeah, it's the thoughts we suffer through our thoughts. I don't like this feeling. Oh, I'm going through depression. The depression itself is not causing your suffering. It's the fact that you don't like it and you want to change it. Because if you're going through it, you're gonna become familiar with the depression. But the moment you start that resisting, oh, I don't want to. Don't want this feeling. I want this over here. That's where you suffer. This is why most of us,
well,
we don't face our problems. We run. We want
not to
objects. Yeah, go ahead.
not to cut you, but let me just, as you're talking about this depression part now, this is where the problem with the depression argument is that, you see, people don't have the information. So while they're in their mind space, while they're in their head space, they don't know how to deal with the issue. They don't know how to solve the problem. They don't. Their mind is just scattered, right? And once you get locked into that, it can be difficult to get out of that. Now, you and I can look at it and say, yeah, if you do this and this and that and fix this in your life, you'll see that the depression will go away. But it's not that easy to tell people that. It's kind of like even this conversation we're having. It's very difficult to get people to listen to this conversation because they don't have the consciousness or the mindset to see and hear what it is that the message that we're trying to relay here. Depression is the same thing. Once your mind becomes scrambled, because that's what depression is, your mind becomes scrambled,
Right,
and
I
you got to put
agree.
it back together.
So this is why when I'm dealing with a person who is going through it, I do less talking rather than I get them to talk about their experiences, because sometimes being lost in the depression, the only thing you want to do is just be uttering words. It doesn't matter what, just utter words. So sometimes you give them that, space where just talk, I'm listening, just talk. And you validate their experiences and so forth. So and then afterwards, now when they get to a clear state of mind or a better state where they can get a little mental ease, you start to get them, okay, you have all these multitude of thoughts, but you're gonna have to separate them. What are the ones about the past? What are the ones about the future? What are the ones that are present? Now, what are the ones that you can control? What are the ones that you cannot do anything about? And once you start to dissect all of these, you're gonna find out that all these hundreds of thoughts is just gonna narrow down to probably 3 things you have to do now. Because you cannot go back to the past to do something, and you cannot go to the future to do something. So what can you do today that is in your control? And that's where we're going to start work from, because you're going to work with some form of tangibility, something in reality. And you get them to start, you see what I'm saying? So you're slowing down the multitude of thoughts. So the overwhelmed state that they are in, you are breaking down that state of being overwhelmed. You see what I'm saying? So it's approached different ways, but you don't just tell people to do this. You allow them to speak first, because sometimes all these bring emotions in the body, and these emotions get trapped in the nervous system, putting them in that flight or fight state. You just want to run, or you want to, you see what I'm saying? So you deal with their experience, because in the experience is where you get refuge. This is where you find peace, you find solution. But not when you're, as we say, scrambled thoughts. No, you don't do that. So you take your time with them and go by their experience. And that's a good place to start. So that's how I deal with these people. Yeah.
You're 100% right, man. You're knowledgeable about what you're saying. That's exactly how it is. That's exactly how it is.
I want to thank you guys, because thank you guys for joining in. It was a very good conversation. And Danny boy, I hope to see you again sometime around. My page is always here, so you can always check it out just at the same. And if we cross path again, whichever way it works out, thank you for joining in. It was a very good conversation. I appreciate your time. And as you said, you only came in to drop in your 2 cents, but you stayed longer, so we still appreciate that just the same. So
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It was well worth a great conversation. Ladies are very knowledgeable too, and believe me, great conversation, man. These are the only places I spend a little bit of my time where it's meaningful.
So that, all right. Until then, see you guys again. And thank you guys all who joined in. Hope you guys got some revelation of knowledge. Thank you, everyone. This is where I say
Take care, my
shalom.
brother.
Yeah, man.
Your
All
voice
right.
is clear.